Tonight, we're traveling to one of the coldest, darkest, and most terrifying mysteries ever recorded. A mystery so strange that even after decades of investigations, scientific studies, government reports, and endless theories, nobody can say with complete certainty what truly happened. Imagine this. It's the middle of winter. The year is 1959. Deep within the frozen wilderness of the Ural Mountains in the Soviet Union, 9 experienced hikers set out on what should have been a challenging but achievable expedition. They were young, strong, highly trained, and they knew these mountains better than most people ever would. But within weeks, every single one of them would be dead. Their tent would be found ripped open from the inside. Their footprints would lead barefoot into sub-zero darkness. Some bodies would be discovered half-dressed. Others would suffer injuries so severe that investigators compared them to the force of a car crash. One victim was missing her tongue. Another had devastating chest trauma without any visible external wounds. And perhaps most disturbing of all, the official investigation would close without a clear explanation. For decades, rumors spread across the world. Secret military experiments, government cover-ups, avalanches, paranormal forces, creatures lurking in the snow, even alien encounters. But what really happened on that freezing mountainside? What terrified 9 skilled hikers so badly that they abandoned the safety of their tent and ran into a deadly blizzard? Tonight, we were uncovering every clue, every discovery, every theory, and every chilling detail behind the mystery known as the Dyatlov Pass Incident. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because here we explore the world's most mysterious disappearances, unexplained events, and true stories that continue to haunt history. Now dim the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare yourself for one of the most unsettling mysteries ever documented. Our story begins thousands of miles from Moscow, deep inside the unforgiving wilderness of the northern Ural Mountains. In January 1959, a group of young adventurers gathered for what they believed would be another memorable expedition. Their leader was Igor Dyatlov, a talented engineering student with a reputation for discipline, intelligence, and remarkable outdoor skills. The group consisted of university students and experienced hikers who had already completed some of the Soviet Union's most demanding winter expeditions. These weren't reckless thrill seekers. They were experts. Each member understood survival techniques, navigation, winter camping, and the dangers of extreme cold. In many ways, they represented the best of a generation that valued endurance, courage, and exploration. Their goal was ambitious but realistic. They planned to reach a remote mountain known as Otorten. The journey would earn them a high-level hiking certification, an achievement respected throughout the Soviet Union. Family members weren't worried. Friends weren't worried. Their professors weren't worried. There was no reason to be. The hikers were well prepared. They carried equipment, food, cameras, journals, maps, and winter gear. Everything suggested the expedition would proceed exactly as planned. On January 23, the team departed. At first, the journey unfolded normally. The group traveled by train and truck, moving deeper into remote territory. Along the way, they laughed, took photographs, sang songs, and recorded their experiences in journals. Those photographs would later become some of the most haunting images ever associated with an unsolved mystery. The faces in those pictures are smiling, relaxed, confident. None of them knew they were documenting the final days of their lives. As the expedition progressed, one member of the group began experiencing health problems. Yuri Yudin suffered from chronic pain and illness that made continuing nearly impossible. Reluctantly, he turned back. At the time, he considered it a heartbreaking disappointment. Years later, he would realize that decision saved his life. He became the only member of the expedition to return home alive. The remaining 9 hikers pressed forward. Snow deepened around them. Temperatures dropped. The wilderness became increasingly isolated. Civilization faded behind them. Ahead lay only mountains, forests, and endless frozen silence. By the end of January, the group was approaching some of the harshest terrain on their route. Winds intensified. Visibility worsened. Travel became slower and more exhausting. Yet their journals revealed little concern. They remained optimistic, focused, determined to complete their mission. Then came February 1st, 1959, a date that would become infamous. For reasons still debated today, the group deviated from its intended route. Some researchers believe poor visibility caused a navigation error. Others argue they intentionally altered course to avoid difficult terrain. Whatever the reason, they found themselves on the slope of a mountain known to the local Mansi people as Koletsiakal. Translated into English, the name carries a chilling meaning, Mountain of the Dead. As evening approached, conditions continued deteriorating. Instead of descending into a more sheltered forested area, the hikers chose to establish camp on the exposed mountainside. Why they made this decision remains uncertain. Perhaps they wanted to avoid losing altitude, Perhaps they expected better progress the next morning. Perhaps they simply believed their experience would compensate for the weather. They pitched their tent, prepared for the night, organized equipment, and settled in. It would be the last normal evening of their lives. Sometime during the darkness, something happened. Something so alarming that 9 experienced hikers made a decision almost impossible to understand. They cut their way out of the tent from the inside. Not through the entrance, not calmly, not methodically. They slashed open the fabric and escaped into a brutal winter night. Outside, temperatures may have reached -30 degrees Celsius. Winds howled across the mountainside. Visibility was poor. Survival depended on shelter. Yet somehow, the group abandoned almost everything. Boots remained inside. Warm clothing remained inside. Supplies remained inside. The hikers fled carrying little more than the clothes they were already wearing. And from that moment forward, the mystery truly began. Ferdy8 LOVS ENCID NT per T2, the freezing wind screamed across the slopes of the northern Ural Mountains as rescuers stood inside the torn tent. Nobody could understand what they were looking at. 9 experienced hikers had abandoned the only shelter they had. Not only had they left, but they had cut their way out from the inside. And they had done it in the middle of a brutal winter night. The temperature had dropped below -25 degrees Celsius. Outside, there was nothing except darkness, snow, and death. Yet somehow, something inside that tent had terrified them enough to make them run. The rescuers stepped back outside and began following the footprints leading downhill. What they discovered next would transform a missing person case into one of the most famous mysteries in history. The tracks stretched away from the tent in a surprisingly orderly line. This was strange. If the hikers had been running from immediate danger, investigators expected to find signs of panic. Instead, the footprints suggested that many of them had walked. Some prints even appeared to belong to people wearing only socks. Others seemed barefoot. The rescuers stared in disbelief. Nobody willingly walked into a Siberian blizzard without boots. Especially experienced mountaineers. Something had happened. Something powerful enough to override every survival instinct they possessed. The footprints continued for nearly a mile toward a patch of forest at the edge of the mountain. There, beneath a large cedar tree, investigators made another horrifying discovery. A small fire pit, the remains of burned branches, and 2 bodies, The victims were identified as Yuri Krivonischenko and Yuri Doroshenko. Both were found barefoot. Both wore almost no clothing, and both appeared to have died from hypothermia. But that wasn't the strangest part. The cedar tree above them had broken branches as high as 15 feet from the ground. It looked as though someone had desperately climbed the tree, perhaps trying to see something. Or perhaps trying to escape something. Investigators examined the bark. Fresh skin tissue was embedded in parts of the trunk. One of the men had climbed so frantically that he had literally torn flesh from his hands. What had he been trying to see? What was happening on the mountain that night? Nobody knew. And the deeper investigators looked, the stranger the story became. 2. Between the cedar tree and the abandoned tent, rescuers discovered 3 more bodies. They belonged to Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, and Rustam Slobodin. All 3 appeared to be moving back toward the tent when they died. This detail was critical. At some point after fleeing, at least part of the group had decided to return. Why? Perhaps whatever scared them had passed. Perhaps they realized remaining outside meant certain death. Or perhaps they left someone behind. Whatever the reason, they never made it. One by one, the freezing temperatures claimed their lives. The official assumption was beginning to form. Maybe the hikers had panicked because of an avalanche. Maybe they cut through the tent and escaped. Maybe they became lost in the darkness. Maybe they simply froze. Case closed. Except it wasn't, because 4 hikers were still missing. And when rescuers eventually found them months later, the mystery exploded. A spring finally arrived in the Urals. As snow began melting, search teams returned to the mountain. Deep inside a ravine, nearly 250 feet from the cedar tree, they uncovered the remaining victims. What investigators saw left them stunned. These weren't ordinary hypothermia victims. These bodies carried injuries that looked more like the aftermath of a catastrophic car crash. Lyudmila Dubinina had suffered devastating chest trauma. Several ribs were shattered. Another victim, Semyon Zolotaryov, showed similarly massive injuries. Yet there were almost no external wounds. No bruises matching the severity of the damage, no obvious signs of a fight, no evidence of an attack. Medical examiners described the force as comparable to a powerful automobile collision. But there were no cars, no machinery, no witnesses. Nothing. Then investigators discovered something even more disturbing. Lyudmila Dubinina's tongue was missing. Part of her lips were missing. Sections of facial tissue had disappeared. For decades, this detail would fuel endless speculation. Alien attacks, secret experiments, unknown creatures, government cover-ups. But forensic experts later suggested natural decomposition in water may have contributed to those injuries. Even so, the overall picture remained deeply unsettling. How did healthy young hikers sustain such massive internal trauma in the middle of nowhere? That question still haunts researchers today. 2. As investigators cataloged evidence, another bizarre clue emerged. Several items of clothing showed traces of radioactive contamination. Radioactive. On a remote mountain, in 1959, the discovery immediately triggered suspicion. Remember, this was the Cold War. The Soviet Union was conducting secret military projects. Nuclear research facilities existed throughout the country, and secrecy was a way of life. When reports of radiation became public, theories exploded. Were the hikers accidentally exposed to a military test? Did they witness something they weren't supposed to see? Had the government covered up the truth? No definitive answer ever emerged. Some researchers later noted that a few hikers had previous work connections involving radioactive materials. Others argued contamination levels were too low to prove anything significant. But the mystery only deepened. because witnesses in the region reported seeing something unusual in the sky around the time of the incident. Orange glowing spheres, floating lights, strange aerial objects. Military records were vague, witness accounts varied, yet the reports refused to disappear, and before long, the world's imagination took over. Theories began multiplying. Avalanche, secret weapons, aliens, Yeti attacks, paranormal forces. Each theory tried to explain the impossible. Each theory solved some pieces while creating new problems. Let's examine the most famous ones. The avalanche theory dominated official explanations for decades. According to this idea, the hikers feared a snow slide. They cut out of the tent to escape. Methane exposure and poor decisions led to death. Simple, logical, natural. But critics pointed out serious issues. The slope wasn't especially steep. The tent remained largely intact. Footprints survived for long distances, and investigators found little evidence of a major avalanche. For years, avalanche explanations struggled to convince everyone. Then modern researchers revisited the case. Using advanced computer modeling and snow science, some experts proposed a delayed slab avalanche. In this scenario, a section of snow collapsed hours after the hikers cut into the slope. The pressure could have caused severe chest injuries. It could also explain why they fled. Supporters believe this is currently the strongest natural explanation. Yet even this theory doesn't answer every question. Another theory involves military testing. Cold War researchers have suggested secret Soviet weapons may have been active in the region. One proposal centers on parachute mines. These devices explode above the ground. The resulting shockwave can produce devastating internal injuries while leaving minimal external damage. Sound familiar? Supporters argue such explosions might explain the chest trauma. They also point to reports of glowing objects in the sky, but evidence remains circumstantial. No official records proving such tests have surfaced. No fragments were recovered. No smoking gun exists. Then there's the infrasound theory. This idea was proposed by researcher Donnie Eicher. According to the theory, specific wind conditions around the mountain may have created low-frequency sound waves. Humans cannot consciously hear these sounds. However, some studies suggest they may trigger extreme anxiety, panic or feelings of dread. Imagine sitting inside a tent at night. Outside, powerful winds move across the mountain. Suddenly, everyone experiences overwhelming terror. No visible threat, no obvious cause, just pure panic. Could that explain why the group fled? Maybe. But critics argue the theory remains difficult to prove, and it doesn't fully account for all injuries. Of course, the most famous theory involves extraterrestrials. For decades, UFO enthusiasts have pointed to reports of glowing orange lights. They cite unusual injuries, radiation, government secrecy, missing evidence. To believers, the mountain became the site of an encounter with something not from Earth. The problem: there is no direct evidence supporting alien involvement, no physical artifacts, no confirmed sightings connected to the victims. Only speculation, fascinating speculation, but speculation nonetheless. Another popular legend suggests a creature attack. Many people refer to it as the Yeti theory. A giant unknown animal attacks the hikers. The group flees. Chaos follows. This theory gained attention largely because of a mysterious photograph found among the victims' cameras. One image appears to show a dark figure standing in snowy terrain. Some claimed it was evidence of a creature. Others argued it was simply another member of the hiking group. Most experts support the second explanation. Still, the image continues to fuel imagination. Because that's what the Dyatlov Pass mystery does. It leaves room for possibilities. 2 years passed, then decades. The Soviet Union collapsed. Files were released. Researchers returned. Me documentaries multiplied. Books were written. Podcasts analyzed every detail. The mystery became a global obsession. Entire communities dedicated themselves to solving the case. Me. Yet, despite thousands of hours of investigation, certainty remained elusive. Finally, in 2019, Russian authorities reopened the inquiry. Modern forensic techniques were applied. Scientists re-examined old evidence. After extensive review, officials announced their conclusion. A natural avalanche, related event combined with hypothermia. No aliens, no monsters, no secret weapons, just nature. Brutal and unforgiving. Many experts accepted the explanation. Others remained unconvinced, and the debate continues to this day. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the Dyatlov Pass incident isn't what we know. It's what we don't know. We know 9 people entered the mountains. We know none of them returned. We know they abandoned their tent under extraordinary circumstances. We know some suffered injuries that remain difficult to explain completely. And we know the full story died with them. No survivor ever told investigators what happened that night. No final message explained their decisions. No witness watched the tragedy unfold. The mountain kept its secret. And maybe it always will. Hitu. More than 60 years later, travelers still visit the location. The pass itself was eventually named in honor of the group's leader, Igor Dyatlov. Standing there today, visitors see a remote wilderness stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Silent, frozen, beautiful, and unsettling. Because somewhere beneath that silence lies one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. 9 experienced hikers. 1 terrifying night. Countless unanswered questions. And a story that refuses to die.